action movies don't hit like they used to. Older films felt gritty, had weight, and a real sense of danger. Modern action movies, they're bigger, louder, flashier, and somehow less exciting. Is it too much CGI, a lack of story, or something else? Let's find out. Story is everything, even when it comes to action movies. The crazy stunts, impressive fight choreography, over-the-top shootouts, and creative gags mean absolutely nothing when you're not connected to the story or characters. Sure, it can still be fun and entertaining to watch a mindless action movie that lacks a solid story, but you're most likely not going to remember that film very long after watching it. All of the greatest action movies that people still talk about to this day and go back and rewatch, such as Terminator 2, Die Hard, or Heat, all share one thing in common: great stories with action that complements them. Now, some might bring up films like Mad Max Fury Road or John Wick as examples of films without deep stories that are still regarded as incredible action films, and I would agree. But even those films still make sure you're connected to the characters and add depth in other ways. In Mad Max, we learned so much about the characters and the world from the visual storytelling alone. We witnessed the characters and their relationships develop through the action, so the story might seem basic on the surface, but really there's a lot more going on. With John Wick, it's just a revenge story, but it's one that has emotional weight behind it. John loses everything, his wife and then the dog that she left him. As an audience, we connect to this immediately. We also learn more about John's past and who he is as the film goes on. This is done by using other characters' reactions and thoughts about him.
He was the one you sent to kill the fucking boogeyman.
As well as using his own actions to show us exactly who he is. Because the reason he's seeking revenge is emotionally driven, it adds weight and impact to all of his actions. As an audience, we need to care about the characters and the stakes in order to buy into everything else. On top of this, it's important that each scene builds off the previous. Terminator 2 Judgment Day does this perfectly. The film weaves between action and exposition seamlessly because the exposition never overstays its welcome. We get the information we need, it adds detail to the story and the characters, and then we're on to the next beat of action. There's a real sense of urgency throughout the film without making the viewer feel like they've missed out on key information. The story comes first, which makes all the action even more enjoyable, and each action sequence grows within itself until we reach the final epic act of the film for the grand payoff. The action movies that are remembered the most are the ones that understand action isn't a substitute for storytelling, but rather an expansion of it. Another problem I see with modern action films is many of them look and feel way too clean. This is really true across all genres, but it's almost more noticeable in an action movie because we expect there to be a bit more dirtiness and grit when we're seeing explosions, car chases, and fights happening. There's a number of reasons behind this, such as shooting on digital instead of film, which just naturally gives the images a more polished look because you lose the imperfections and grain that you get when shooting on film. But even then, there are plenty of movies that have shot on digital and still do a solid job at replicating that film look. Another key reason behind the clean look is lighting. When films use too much light, they lose depth, which can make the picture end up looking almost flat. There's a lack of shadows on characters, and areas in shots that should be darker just aren't. The shots might look perfect technically, but it's not really how things would appear if we were there in real life. In return, this can make things feel less authentic, and when it comes to action movies, having that authenticity really adds to the overall experience and sells the action. The clean look also applies to the world and characters as well. This scene from The Flash is supposed to be in a wide open desert, but it feels much more like green screens on a soundstage. We'll get into CGI and action movies in a bit, but just look at the characters in the scene for a minute. They're running around, fighting, there's smoke, dirt, and dust, but everyone appears completely unscathed. There's barely any dirt on anyone, there's no sweat, the suits are still shiny, and there's nothing showing us how tough this fight is for these characters. Compare that to Mad Max Fury Road, that also takes place in a desert. These characters look like they've been through complete hell. They're covered in sweat, have bruises on their face, blood on their bodies, and you can just tell visually what they've been through. If none of the fighting was shown and you only saw this frame, you know immediately that she's been through something extreme. I understand The Flash and Fury Road are two completely different styles of films, with different artistic choices and target audiences, but it doesn't change how one feels more authentic. Something else that can take away from the authenticity is how the camera is used and how the action is cut. In 2002, the Bourne Identity released and started an action movie trend that would change the genre forever. Older action films have very clear action. They use a lot of wide shots, which allows the audience to see the characters' entire bodies and witness the impressive physical moments. The camera also doesn't move much, but when it does, it follows the character's actions without being disruptive. The Bourne trilogy took a different approach. The first film still felt pretty traditional in a lot of ways, using wide shots and holding on those shots for a bit longer, but by the second film, The Bourne Supremacy, the wide shots became close-ups. The camera became shakier, and the cuts became faster. Instead of just viewing the film, these choices made the audience experience it. On the surface, the fast cutting and shaky camera might seem random and chaotic, but Paul Greengrass, the director of the Bourne trilogy, made all of these choices with intention. Many of the action films that have tried to replicate this style failed because they used it to hide bad action instead of enhance it. This style has somewhat declined over time, but there's still plenty of new movies that try to use it. Take Havoc from this year as an example. Directed by Gareth Evans, who is most known for directing the Raid films. Those movies many people would consider some of the best action movies of the 21st century. Havoc, on the other hand, fails to capture much, if any, of what made the Raid films so great. The use of shaky cam and quick cutting is in full force here, and just like many of the other films that have failed to use it successfully like the Bourne franchise did, Havoc comes off messy most of the time. It's extremely difficult to follow any of the fight scenes because as a viewer, we have no real sense of where anyone is or what the space around them is. The camera movement and cutting is so quick that it actually takes away from the action on screen. Just look at this scene from The Raid next to this scene from Havoc. In The Raid, there's still close-ups and shaky cam, but there's also plenty of cuts to wide shots so that we can understand the space around the characters and where they are in that space, making it much easier to follow along with the action. On top of this, the cutting and the shaky cam work alongside the fight choreography to make it feel faster and more impactful. All of these choices feel very intentional, whereas Havoc feels like most of the time these techniques are just being used for style rather than purpose. The best action films use the camera and editing to pull you into the action. The forgettable ones use it to cover it up. Something that has really infected the action genre in recent years is the overuse of CGI. Action should look better than it ever has, but more often than not, it looks worse. There's plenty of films from the same exact franchise that we can compare and immediately see how the modern films look so much worse. Take Fast 5 that used real cars on real streets versus F9 that has a CGI Vin Diesel jumping from a CGI truck on fire that blows up a CGI fighter jet. Or Gladiator 2 that chose to use an awful looking CGI baboon instead of real animals like the original. When CGI hinders the action or takes away from it, what's the point in using it? Or writing scenes that rely so heavily on it? The best examples of CGI being used in action films is when it's blended together with practical effects and is subtle to the point that you don't even really notice it's there. A lot of action movies take place in the real world. So when something is added that is obviously fake, it breaks the immersion. The reason we love films like Terminator 2 or Heat is because what we're watching is real. When the helicopter flies under the freeway overpass in T2, we can feel that danger and risk. In Heat, when the tow truck crashes into the armored truck, we feel that impact. If those moments were CGI, it wouldn't be impressive to us at all, and the authenticity of those moments would be gone. Even in action films that take place in fantasy worlds, the use of some practical sets, costumes, and effects is still important. When a film relies on CGI for everything, it's nearly impossible to make sure it all looks perfect, especially when there's deadlines to meet and studios with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. If action films are going to use CGI, then it needs to be done to amplify the action, not replace it. Once that sense of danger is gone, so is the excitement that made action movies so great to begin with. In a similar way to too much CGI taking away the risk and danger that's felt in older action films, modern action characters in many cases have done the same. When we feel like there's no real threat to our characters, it makes those intense action moments less exciting. Many of the main characters nowadays are skilled professionals that can fight or shoot their way out of every situation. They don't feel like real people and are basically just superheroes at this point. In the original Die Hard, for instance, there were moments where it felt like John McClane might not actually survive. He's held at gunpoint, beat up, and completely exhausted. It takes every ounce of him to continue fighting, and as a viewer, we can feel it. Compare this to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, where we've seen Ethan Hunt survive so many situations that we know he's probably going to survive any trouble he gets in. This is of course the 8th film in the franchise, so part of the problem also stems from studios keeping franchises going on for so long and wanting to turn any successful film into one. But when you have such a skilled character like Ethan Hunt, who's going to win every fight and escape every situation, it starts to become very underwhelming. There still needs to be doubt in the viewer's mind that these characters can keep going. When you have no real risk or threat that could take them down, the tension completely disappears. The best action scenes aren't just about explosions or choreography, they're about uncertainty. We need to believe that the hero might fail, that every punch could be their last, and that survival actually costs something. Without that vulnerability, action becomes an empty spectacle. It's loud, fast, and technically impressive, but it doesn't make you feel anything. That's what separates a great action movie from a forgettable one. Not how big the set pieces are, but how much we care about the person caught in them. At their best, action movies aren't just about loud explosions, impressive fight choreography, or epic shootouts. They're about why it's happening and who it's happening to. The reason we still talk about films like Die Hard, Terminator 2, or Heat is because they tell stories that make us feel something. The action is just there to complement it. Many modern action films have put the story second and started chasing spectacle instead of substance. They've become overly polished, packed full of CGI, and characters who face no real threat. Audiences crave authenticity. If action movies want to get back to hitting like they used to, they don't need to go bigger, they need to go realer. Real stakes, real emotion, real impact. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on modern action movies and what some of your favorites are. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and consider sharing it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.